Canada and legally get out of your future income tax obligations there. Now, generally, if you're an immigrant for income tax purposes in Canada, if you meet the following criteria, and that is number one is if you leave Canada to live in another country, and number two is you sever your residential ties with Canada. Also, folks, if you want to legally get your income taxes to zero, how to get a second passport, as quick as 45 days, do three things. Hit the subscribe button at the right of your screen right here, and you get new videos automatically as they come out. And I would like to hear from you. If you got a question or comment, just put it below, and I'll be glad to get back with you. Number three is go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, and ask for some help. All right, now, severing your residential ties with Canada means that you don't keep any sort of main ties with Canada. This could be your case if you dispose or give up your home that's in Canada and you establish a permanent home in another country. And number two is your spouse or common law partner or dependents leave Canada. And number three is you dispose of personal property and break social ties in Canada and acquire and establish them in another country. Also, if you leave Canada and keep residential ties there, you're usually considered a factual resident and not what's called an e-migrant. And they spell a little bit different. They spell it as E-M-I-G-R-A-N-T, e-migrant. That's how I pronounce it anyway. And however, if you're also considered to be a resident of another country, which Canada has a tax treaty with, you may be considered and deemed a non-resident. Now, deemed non-residents are subject to the same rules as e-migrants. Now, let's look at determining your residency status. Now, under Canada's tax system, your income tax obligations to Canada are based on your residency status. Now, what you need to do is you need to know your residency status before you know what your tax responsibilities and filing requirements to Canada are. An individual's residency status is determined on a case-by-case basis, and the individual's whole situation and all the relevant facts must be considered. Now, the following steps can help you determine your residency status for income tax purposes and your tax obligations to Canada. And that is number one is, first of all, you got to determine if you have residential ties to Canada. Now, the most important thing to consider when determining your residency status in Canada for income tax purposes is whether or not you maintain or you establish residential ties with Canada. Now, significant residential ties with Canada include, do you have a home in Canada? That's number one. Number two is a spouse or common law partner in Canada. And number three is, do you have any dependents in Canada? Now, they don't look at all of these, but these are some things they're going to be examining along with other matters. And the more of these that you can actually keep from happening, the more likely the revenue authorities are going to view you as a non-resident of Canada. Secondary residential ties they look at that may be relevant also include personal property in Canada, such as a car or furniture. You also have social ties in Canada, such as memberships in Canadian recreation or religious organizations, economic ties in Canada, such as a Canadian bank account or credit cards, or a Canadian driver's license. You got a Canadian passport. Now, you don't have to give up your Canadian passport, but these are just some things that they're looking at because you're more likely to be trying to go back into Canada and cheat around the taxes if you've got a passport. So, they do look at that, but like I say, you don't have to give that up. The other one is health insurance with a Canadian province or territory. So these are some things that you're going to need to give up. Now, to determine residence status, all the relevant facts in each case must be considered, including residential ties with Canada and the length of time, object and intent and continuity while living inside or outside of Canada. Now, the information I've given you is pretty much general in nature, but if you want more information on your residential ties, you can go where it says just do a Google search and put income tax folio, F-O-L-I-O, and then S as in Sam 5-F as in Frank 1-C1, and where it says determine an individual's residence status, just put that in and you'll pull up a lot of information there. Now, let's look at determine your residence status and its tax implications. Now, first of all, what is your residency status if you left Canada? If you're working temporarily outside of Canada, vacationing outside of Canada, commuting, going back and forth daily or weekly from Canada to your place of work, let's say it's in the United States, or you're attending school in another country, and you maintain your residential ties with Canada, you may be considered what's called a factual resident of Canada. Now, if you left Canada and established a permanent home in another country, and you severed your residential ties with Canada, ceasing to be a resident of Canada in the tax year, you may be considered what's called an e-migrant. Now, if you establish ties in a country that Canada has a tax treaty with, and you're considered a resident of that country, but you are otherwise a factual resident of Canada, meaning you maintain significant residential ties with Canada, you may be considered a deemed non-resident of Canada. Now, the same rules apply to deemed non-residents as non-residents of Canada. Now, let's look at your residency status if you've entered back into Canada and how they're going to view that. Now, if you've left another country to settle in Canada and you've established significant residential ties with Canada, becoming a resident of Canada in the tax year, you may be considered an immigrant where you've actually entered the country. Now, if you have ties in a country that Canada has a tax treaty with and you're considered to be a resident of that country, but you're also a factual resident of Canada because you established significant residential ties with Canada, you may be considered a deemed non-resident of Canada. Now, the same rules apply to deemed non-residents as non-residents of Canada. Now, if you have established significant residential ties with Canada to be considered a factual resident, but you stayed in Canada for 183 days or more in a year, you may be considered or deemed a resident of Canada. The key thing is, folks, you ought to be making sure, darn sure, you're not in Canada more than 183 days a year. Now, your residency status, if you normally, customarily, or routinely live in another country, you need to be looking at these facts. If you do not have significant residential ties with Canada and you lived outside of Canada throughout the year, except if you were deemed a resident of Canada, you may be considered what's called a non-resident of Canada. Now, if you don't have significant residential ties with Canada and you stayed in Canada for less than 183 days in a tax year, you may be considered a non-resident of Canada. All right, now if you want the Canada Revenue Agency's opinion on your residency status, you can complete either form. It's called N as in Nancy, R as in Red, 74, and it's called the Determination of Residency Status, and this is on entering Canada. Or you can file form an N as in Nancy, R as in Red, 73. This form is called Determination of Residency Status if you're leaving Canada. So one's leaving, one's arriving, okay? It just depends on whichever applies to you, and then you're going to send this to the address that's on that form that I gave you. Now, to get the most accurate opinion, provide as many details as possible on your form, and they can give you a better answer on that. All right, now let's look at the departure tax. Now, when you leave Canada, you're going to be considered to have sold certain types of property, even if you haven't sold them, at their fair market value, also called the FMV, and to have immediately reacquired them for the same amount. This is called deemed disposition, and you may have to report a capital gain, also known as a departure tax. Your property could include shares in equities, jewelry, paintings, or collection. The key is, I would be trying, if you're accumulating stuff like this, sometimes it's unavoidable, but you ought to be trying to get this stuff outside of Canada after you've moved out, and then you don't have all these tax obligations. But if you want more information, go to dispositions of property in Canada, and you'll get more information on that. But folks, if you want to really legally get your income taxes to zero, one of the best places on earth is St. Kitts and Nevis. We just did a video yesterday on residency by investment countries, the best ones based on dual citizenship, the countries that had the most visa-free travel that you can go to, that allow dual citizenship, that also had real good income taxes where you could literally live there tax-free. These are the type of countries, if you're leaving Canada, you need to be choosing at. Now, if you want to know more on this, go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com. Hit the top bar that says apply with us, fill out the questions, hit that bottom bar where it says send it to us. We'll get back with you. We can show you how to get your taxes to zero and to keep them that way. We can also, if you want to get a second passport, we can help you get that as quick as 45 days. And again, don't forget, folks, to hit the subscribe button on the right of your screen. You'll get these new videos automatically. And I would like to hear from you. If you got a question or comment, just put it below, and I'll look forward to talking to you on the next video. Take care.